What happens when two of Hollywood's brightest stars fall in love, face the world together, and then part ways yet find themselves forever bound by family? It's a question that has fascinated millions for nearly 2 decades, and at 53, Jennifer Garner finally offers the perspective only time and experience can bring. To the world, she's the actress who brought Sydney Bristow to life in the hit series Alias, the charming lead of 13 Going on 30, and the steady hand in films ranging from Dallas Buyers Club to The Last Thing He Told Me. But Garner is far more than the roles she's played. She's a devoted mother of 3, a passionate activist for children's causes, an entrepreneur who co-founded a thriving organic food company, and a woman who has carried herself with grace through some of Hollywood's most scrutinized storms. At the center of her story is Ben Affleck, the Oscar-winning actor, writer, and director whose life has been a roller coaster of meteoric rises, very public struggles, and reinventions that have made him one of the most compelling figures in modern cinema. Their love story once seemed like the fairytale Hollywood dreamed of, a secret island wedding, 3 beautiful children, and 2 careers that placed them firmly in the spotlight. They were grounded yet glamorous, admired not just for their talent but for appearing like real people who tried to build a normal family in an extraordinary world. But behind the red carpets and magazine covers, pressures were mounting. Affleck's battles with addiction, the constant scrutiny of the press, and the unrelenting pace of fame chipped away at the foundation of their marriage. When they announced their separation in 2015, the world was stunned. By the time their divorce was finalized in 2018, the fairytale had crumbled, leaving behind the more complicated reality of co-parenting, healing, and moving forward. Now, years later, Garner is no longer silent. She doesn't speak with bitterness, nor does she fuel gossip. Instead, her words reflect resilience, maturity, and a hard-won sense of peace. She acknowledges the pain but focuses on the lessons learned, the children who remain at the heart of everything, and the dignity that allowed her to weather heartbreak in front of millions without losing herself. This is not just a story about celebrity romance gone wrong. It's about the way love can shape us, challenge us, and ultimately strengthen us. It's about what happens when personal lives are lived on the biggest stage imaginable, and how one woman emerged from the chaos with grace, purpose, and authenticity. Jennifer Garner at 53 is not looking back with regret, she's looking forward with clarity. And her story about Ben Affleck is one that might just change how we think about love, loss, and what it means to grow. Jennifer and Garner's journey from a small-town girl to a celebrated Hollywood star is one of discipline, resilience, and a quiet determination that often set her apart from the typical narrative of overnight stardom. She was born on April 17, 1972, in Houston, Texas, but her childhood was shaped not by the bustle of a big city, but by the steady rhythms of Charleston, West Virginia, where her family moved when she was just 3 years old. Her father worked as a chemical engineer, her mother was a homemaker and later a college English teacher, and together they raised Jennifer and her 2 sisters with a mix of strict values and supportive encouragement. Church on Sundays, an emphasis on education, and a home that instilled modesty and responsibility became the framework of her early life. Jennifer grew up attending the United Methodist Church, a faith that would remain a grounding presence throughout her life, even as she navigated the dizzying world of Hollywood later on. From an early age, Garner was drawn to the arts. At just 3 years old, she began taking ballet lessons, and dance quickly became a central part of her youth. She trained rigorously for years, developing the discipline that would later serve her well as an actress. But while she loved dance, she admitted she never had the passion to pursue it as a career. By the time she reached high school, her interests began to shift. After participating in local plays and school productions, she discovered acting offered her something ballet could not: freedom, storytelling, and a sense of personal expression that felt more alive. That discovery guided her decision to attend Denison University in Ohio, where she majored in theater. She earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, immersing herself in stage productions and learning the craft of acting from the ground up. Unlike some actors who chase fame, Garner studied her art seriously, determined to carve out a career based not on celebrity but on skill. Yet the road ahead wasn't easy. After graduation, she moved to New York City, where she worked as a waitress to support herself while taking small theater jobs and auditioning whenever she could. Those years were full of struggle, tiny television parts, one-day guest appearances, and background roles that barely paid the bills. But Garner persevered, honing her ability, building connections, and waiting for the opportunity that would finally let her break through. That opportunity came in 2001 with the television series Alias. Cast as Sydney Bristow, a young CIA agent living a double life, Garner found herself in a role that demanded not just emotional depth but physical intensity. She performed elaborate stunts, mastered fight choreography, and anchored a series that quickly gained a loyal fanbase and critical acclaim. Alias ran from 2001 to 2006, and in that time, Garner became a household name. She won a Golden Globe for Best Actress and earned multiple Emmy nominations, while also receiving praise for her ability to balance vulnerability with strength. The show not only launched her career but also reshaped television's perception of female action leads. Hollywood took notice. While she continued to carry Alias, Garner began appearing in films that showcased her range. She played a supporting role in Steven Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can alongside Leonardo DiCaprio, proving she could hold her own in serious, high-profile productions. In 2003, she starred as Elektra in Daredevil opposite Ben Affleck, a project that would change not only her career trajectory but also her personal life. Then came her defining film moment, 13 Going on 30 in 2004. As Jenna Rink, a 13-year-old who wakes up in her 30-year-old body, Garner brought warmth, humor, and charm that made the romantic comedy an instant classic. The role solidified her as a bankable movie star, beloved by audiences for her sincerity and charisma. Benjamin Guzar Affleck Bolt was born on August 15, 1972, in Berkeley, California, but his formative years were spent in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where his family moved when he was young. His parents, a teacher and a social worker, instilled in him an appreciation for education and creativity, though the family's circumstances were modest. Cambridge itself became a critical backdrop in shaping Affleck's identity, an intellectually vibrant yet gritty environment that gave him both ambition and resilience. It was here that he would forge one of the most significant friendships of his life, a bond that would eventually define his career and launch him into Hollywood history. That friendship was with Matt Damon, a neighborhood kid who shared Affleck's passion for acting and storytelling. The two became inseparable, auditioning together, reading scripts, and dreaming about success at a time when it seemed impossibly far away. Their collaboration wasn't just about ambition, it was about survival in an industry that often shuts out outsiders. They made a pact to support one another no matter what, a brotherhood that would one day pay off in spectacular fashion. In 1997, their dream came true with Good Will Hunting. Written by Damon and Affleck, and starring the two alongside Robin Williams, the film was a raw, heartfelt exploration of talent, pain, and redemption. Hollywood was stunned not only by the story but by the fact that two young, relatively unknown actors had crafted it themselves. When the Academy Awards rolled around, Affleck and Damon walked away with the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. At just 25 years old, Ben Affleck had joined the elite ranks of Oscar winners, catapulting him into the limelight and making him one of Hollywood's most bankable young stars. With fame came opportunity, and Affleck quickly transitioned into leading roles in blockbuster films. He headlined Michael Bay's Armageddon in 1998, a global hit that showcased him as an action star. Soon after came Pearl Harbor in 2001, another high-profile production that cemented his reputation as a Hollywood leading man. In 2002, he demonstrated his versatility with the intense drama Changing Lanes, proving he could handle complex roles as well as large-scale spectacle. Audiences responded to his charisma, but the intense spotlight also came with heavy costs. By the early 2000s, Affleck's personal life began overshadowing his work. Highly publicized relationships, relentless paparazzi attention, and struggles with alcohol began to erode his reputation. Once hailed as one of Hollywood's brightest stars, he found himself the target of tabloids and critics who dismissed him as a cautionary tale of fame gone wrong. For several years, his career seemed to falter, his talent buried under the weight of gossip and poor choices in film projects. But Affleck was not content to fade away. Determined to reclaim his place in Hollywood, he turned to the craft he loved most, storytelling. In 2007, he stepped behind the camera to direct Gone Baby Gone, a gritty Boston-set thriller that earned critical acclaim and proved he had a new voice to offer the industry. He followed this with The Town in 2010, another film deeply rooted in his Boston upbringing, which further solidified his reputation as a skilled director capable of telling complex, authentic stories. His true triumph came in 2012 with Argo, a political thriller about a daring CIA rescue mission during the Iran hostage crisis. The film not only captivated audiences but also swept awards season, culminating in a win for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Affleck's career had come full circle, from wunderkind writer to blockbuster star, from tabloid casualty to celebrated filmmaker. Even after this redemption, Affleck continued to reinvent himself. In 2016, he stepped into the role of Batman in the DC Extended Universe, bringing a brooding, more mature take to the iconic character. While the films themselves sparked mixed reactions, his portrayal earned respect for its depth and intensity, proving his ability to embody larger-than-life roles. Ben Affleck's journey has been anything but linear. From his early days in Cambridge dreaming with Matt Damon, to Oscar glory, public struggles, and eventual reinvention as a filmmaker and star, his story is one of resilience and survival. He has stumbled, fallen, and risen again, each time carving out a new chapter in a career that refuses to be defined by setbacks. Today, he remains one of Hollywood's most fascinating figures, a man whose triumphs and failures are as compelling as the characters he brings to life on screen. When Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck first crossed paths, neither could have imagined the journey their connection would one day take them on. Their initial meeting happened in 2000 on the set of Pearl Harbor, a big-budget World War II epic in which Affleck played a heroic fighter pilot and Garner took on a small supporting role. At the time, their interaction was professional and fleeting, two young actors at different stages of their careers, immersed in a sprawling production that kept them more as colleagues than friends. Still, even then, there was a familiarity about each other that would linger in the background of their lives. It wasn't until 2003, when they reunited on the set of Daredevil, that something deeper began to take root. This time, the circumstances were different. Garner played Elektra, a deadly warrior with a complex bond to Affleck's Matt Murdock, the blind vigilante hero. Their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, radiating beyond the cameras and sparking whispers in the industry. Both actors would later acknowledge that it was during Daredevil that they truly connected. Garner once admitted that the film was where she fell in love with Affleck, even though neither of them was in a position to act on those feelings at the time. The reason was simple: both were committed to other people. Garner had been married to actor Scott Foley, whom she met while working on the television series Felicity. Their marriage, however, was beginning to show signs of strain, and by 2003, the two quietly separated. Affleck, on the other hand, was in the middle of one of Hollywood's most talked-about romances with Jennifer Lopez. Their relationship, dubbed Bennifer by the press, dominated tabloids and paparazzi coverage. They were engaged and even planning a lavish wedding before the pressures of fame and relentless media scrutiny eventually drove them apart in early 2004. As Garner closed one chapter of her life and Affleck found himself reeling from the collapse of his high-profile engagement, the two began to drift closer. What had once been a flicker of connection on set evolved into something more meaningful in private. By the mid-2000s, sparks between them had become undeniable, and they allowed themselves to explore what had always been simmering in the background. For many, their romance seemed unexpected, but for those who had witnessed their friendship grow, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. What made their bond so compelling was the contrast in their personalities. Garner, the grounded, small-town girl with a reputation for warmth and humility, seemed to balance Affleck's larger-than-life presence and restless energy. He admired her steadiness and her ability to find joy in the ordinary, while she was drawn to his ambition, his intelligence, and the sense that beneath the fame and headlines, there was a man searching for stability. Together, they found comfort in one another, a kind of sanctuary away from the chaos of Hollywood. By the time their relationship became public, audiences were intrigued. Here were two stars who had navigated the pressures of failed relationships and media scrutiny, now stepping into something that felt both fresh and deeply authentic. It wasn't just about movie star glamour, it was about timing, second chances, and the undeniable pull of chemistry that had been building since their earliest days on set. For Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck, the story truly began not with a headline or a tabloid scoop, but in those long days filming together, when two actors slowly discovered that the roles they were playing on screen might just reflect something far more real happening behind the scenes. In June 2005, Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck surprised the world with a wedding that was as quiet as it was intimate. Instead of a grand Hollywood spectacle filled with flashing cameras and designer gowns, they chose a secluded ceremony in Turks and Caicos. There were no hordes of paparazzi, no red carpet build-up, just two people, deeply in love, committing to one another away from the eyes of the world. The only witness was actor Victor Garber, Garner's close friend and Alias co-star, who officiated the ceremony. It was a beginning that perfectly reflected their desire for something authentic, something theirs alone, in a world that seemed to demand every detail of their private lives. From that moment on, they were hailed as one of Hollywood's most admired couples. To fans, they represented a kind of modern fairy tale. Garner's reputation as the approachable girl next door combined with Affleck's image as the charismatic leading man made them irresistible to the public. They were glamorous enough to grace magazine covers but grounded enough to seem relatable. Unlike other celebrity couples who leaned into the spotlight, Garner and Affleck often gave the impression that they would rather be at home in sweatpants with their children than walking red carpets. Their family grew quickly, adding new layers to their story. In December 2005, just months after their wedding, they welcomed their first daughter, Violet. Photographed often with her mother, Violet became a symbol of Garner's devotion to motherhood, the actress frequently seen holding her hand on school runs or laughing with her in everyday settings. 4 years later, in January 2009, their second daughter, Serafina, was born. Then in February 2012, their family was completed with the arrival of their son, Samuel. For Garner, motherhood became not just a role but a calling, one she balanced alongside her acting career with an ease that impressed fans and critics alike. What made their image so enduring was how normal they seemed, despite their fame. Garner was regularly photographed doing school drop-offs, grocery shopping, or attending soccer games. Affleck, though often busy with filming or directing, was seen coaching his children's sports teams and spending quiet weekends with his family. Together, they crafted an image of celebrity parenting that was remarkably relatable. They were not dripping in extravagance or flaunting designer lifestyles. Instead, they seemed intent on giving their kids as normal a childhood as possible. Garner even became a strong advocate against intrusive paparazzi, working alongside other celebrity mothers to push for legislation protecting children from constant media harassment. All the while, Garner continued to balance her career with her family life. After Alias ended in 2006, she transitioned more into films, starring in projects like Juno, 2007, The Invention of Lying, 2009, and Valentine's Day, 2010, while also taking deliberate breaks to spend time at home. She became known not only for her acting talent but for her ability to navigate Hollywood while prioritizing her role as a mother. Affleck, meanwhile, was undergoing his own transformation. Though he continued acting in high-profile films, his passion increasingly shifted toward directing. With Gone Baby Gone in 2007 and The Town in 2010, he began to rebuild his reputation as a serious filmmaker, culminating in the extraordinary success of Argo in 2012, which won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It was a period of professional triumph for Affleck, and through it all, Garner was a steady presence by his side, attending premieres, supporting his projects, and managing the home front during his long stretches of work. To the outside world, their life looked picture-perfect. They were a couple who had it all: fame, success, and a beautiful family. They seemed to embody the ideal of a Hollywood love story, proving that even under the brightest spotlight, it was possible to build a grounded, authentic life together. For a time, it felt like the fairy tale was real, a rare success story in an industry where marriages often struggled to survive. 4 years, Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck had managed to maintain the image of Hollywood's most grounded couple, but behind the scenes, cracks were slowly beginning to show. Affleck, who had long battled his demons, began to find himself once again struggling with old habits. Rumors of late nights, high-stakes gambling, and heavy drinking started to circulate, echoing the challenges he had faced earlier in his career. While Garner worked tirelessly to protect their family from the glare of the spotlight, whispers of Affleck's troubles became harder and harder to ignore. At the same time, the demands of Affleck's career added further pressure. After the success of Gone Baby Gone and The Town, his directing career soared, culminating with Argo winning Best Picture in 2012. But with that acclaim came enormous expectations. Hollywood now viewed Affleck not only as a leading man but as one of its most promising filmmakers, and the pressure to maintain that momentum weighed heavily on him. Balancing acting, directing, and producing proved exhausting, and as his workload grew, so too did the stress. Those closest to him, including Garner, could see the toll it was taking. The media, always eager to find weakness in a seemingly perfect story, pounced. Paparazzi followed their every move, eager to capture a crack in the carefully curated image of family bliss. Tabloid headlines speculated endlessly about Affleck's drinking, his late nights at casinos, and his strained relationship with Garner. Every photograph of the couple was dissected. Was that a forced smile, a tense glance, a moment of coldness? While much of the speculation was exaggerated, it reflected a truth that was becoming harder to hide: the distance between them was growing. Through it all, Garner's reputation as the rock of the family became firmly cemented. Friends and fans alike admired her ability to maintain a sense of normalcy for their children. She was the parent most often seen at school events, the one keeping routines intact, the one shielding her kids from the invasive cameras. Her grounded presence stood in stark contrast to the turbulence swirling around Affleck. While he publicly acknowledged his struggles with alcohol, Garner never criticized or condemned him. Instead, she supported him, even driving him to rehab years later, long after they had separated. Her loyalty, even in the face of heartbreak, revealed the depth of her commitment to the family they had built. But commitment could not mask the emotional distance that had crept into their marriage. The pressures of fame, Affleck's personal battles, and the constant intrusion of the media all combined to push them further apart. In public, they remained united, presenting a picture of togetherness for the sake of their children. Yet behind closed doors, the strain was undeniable. Garner herself would later admit in interviews that marriage is hard work, and that theirs was no exception. For many, the unraveling of their relationship came as a shock, precisely because of how steadfast Garner appeared and how affectionate they still seemed in public. But as the cracks widened, it became clear that even Hollywood's most admired couple was not immune to the pressures of fame, addiction, and personal struggle. What the world didn't yet know was that the fairytale was nearing its end and that the story would soon take a heartbreaking turn. In June 2015, after 10 years of marriage, Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck announced that they were separating. The news landed like a thunderclap in Hollywood. For a decade, they had represented what many believed was a rare kind of stability in an industry known for fleeting romances. They weren't just a couple. They were parents raising 3 children while balancing enormous careers. The announcement confirmed what many had speculated for months, that cracks in their seemingly perfect story had finally given way. What struck people most wasn't just the breakup itself, but the way Garner handled it. At a time when bitterness and scandal could have dominated headlines, she instead focused on dignity, compassion, and above all, protecting her children. In her few public interviews during that period, she was measured, even graceful. She refused to disparage Affleck, even as stories swirled around his drinking and alleged infidelities. Her message was consistent: whatever had happened between them, their children's well-being came first. Garner once put it simply and powerfully: "I didn't marry the big movie star. I married him, and I would go back and remake that decision." It was a rare glimpse into her heartache, but also a reminder of the love and commitment that had once defined their relationship. The divorce process itself was long and complicated, stretching out over 3 years before being finalized in October 2018. In those years, the public saw both the strain and the quiet resilience that defined Garner's role in the family. She maintained a semblance of normal life for Violet, Serafina, and Samuel, even as their father's personal struggles played out in the headlines. Affleck's battle with alcohol dependency became increasingly public, with several stints in rehab making news. At one point in 2018, Garner herself was photographed driving him to a treatment center, a powerful symbol of her enduring care and sense of responsibility, even though their marriage was over. For Affleck, it was a time of reckoning. In interviews years later, he would openly admit that the divorce was the biggest regret of my life, acknowledging how his drinking and inability to cope with pressure had damaged the marriage. His honesty was raw, but it also highlighted the role Garner had played not just as a wife, but as someone who fought to keep him afloat when he could have sunk entirely. Meanwhile, Garner emerged as a model of strength. She threw herself into her work, carefully choosing roles that allowed her to balance career and family, and she deepened her involvement in activism and entrepreneurship. She remained steadfastly private about the details of the divorce, refusing to feed gossip. Her focus was on her children, ensuring they knew they had two loving parents, even if those parents were no longer together. Friends often remarked that she carried herself with extraordinary grace, even in moments of profound pain. Their split marked the end of what many had once called a Hollywood fairy tale. And yet, it was not a story of bitterness or destruction. Instead, it became a story of resilience and hard truths about how love can exist even in the ruins of a marriage, about how dignity can triumph over scandal, and about how one woman's strength can hold a family together through unimaginable pressure. By the time the divorce was finalized, the world had seen the unvarnished truth. Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck were no longer husband and wife, but they would always be bound by family. For Garner, it was the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another, one defined not by heartbreak alone but by the courage to keep moving forward. After the divorce was finalized in 2018, Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck entered new chapters of their lives, no longer partners in marriage but still deeply connected as co-parents. For Garner, the years after the split were not about jumping back into Hollywood's relentless spotlight but about grounding herself in what mattered most, her children and her purpose beyond the screen. She became even more intentional about balancing her career with her role as a mother to Violet, Serafina, and Samuel. Public appearances often showed her as a hands-on parent, the steady presence at school functions and family outings, ensuring her children's lives retained a sense of normalcy. At the same time, Garner leaned into her passions beyond acting. She threw herself into philanthropy and activism, working with groups like Save the Children to champion causes focused on education, nutrition, and child welfare. Her image evolved into that of not just an actress, but a respected advocate for children's rights. In 2017, she also co-founded Once Upon a Farm, an organic baby food company built on her belief in healthy, accessible nutrition for families. The company grew rapidly, reflecting her ability to channel her nurturing instincts into entrepreneurship. It was a reminder that Garner wasn't defined by her divorce, she was thriving, growing, and reinventing herself. For Affleck, the post-divorce years were more tumultuous but ultimately transformative. His battle with alcoholism continued to surface, but instead of hiding, he began to speak openly about his struggles. In interviews, he admitted that his drinking had played a significant role in the end of his marriage, calling it the greatest regret of his life. Yet these moments of painful honesty also marked a turning point. Affleck entered therapy, leaned on his support network, and began the long road of rebuilding his life and career. His openness about sobriety and mental health won him admiration for his vulnerability, making him a more relatable figure than ever before. Despite the complexities of their history, Garner and Affleck managed to establish a remarkably functional co-parenting relationship. While the tabloids often speculated about tension between them, the reality was far more nuanced. Garner was there to support Affleck through his lowest points even after the marriage ended, driving him to rehab when necessary and standing by him as a friend and co-parent. Both prioritized their children above everything else, showing that while love as a couple had ended, respect and commitment as parents endured. In their personal lives, both began moving forward. Garner, though fiercely private, was linked romantically to businessman John C. Miller, CEO of Caliburger. Their relationship remained largely out of the public eye, fitting Garner's preference for privacy after years of living under intense scrutiny. Affleck, meanwhile, experienced one of the most surprising twists in Hollywood romance, rekindling his relationship with Jennifer Lopez. Nearly 2 decades after their first engagement had ended in 2004, the two reunited in 2021. The world watched with fascination as Bennifer 2.0 emerged, culminating in their wedding in July 2022. For Affleck, it was a full-circle moment, a chance at happiness with someone from his past who understood both the glamour and the pitfalls of fame. The years following their split showed two very different journeys: Garner's steady, graceful rebuilding of a life centered on family and meaningful work, and Affleck's raw, public path of recovery and renewal. Yet together, their ability to co-parent and support one another proved that while their marriage had ended, their bond as a family remained unbroken. At 53, Jennifer Garner stands at a place many never thought she would reach so openly, a point of calm reflection on a life that has been lived in both the bright glare of Hollywood fame and the quiet, deeply personal corners of motherhood and healing. The young woman who once left West Virginia with a dream of becoming an actress has now become something far greater, a cultural figure admired not just for her work on screen, but for her strength and dignity off it. And in 2025, as she enters her mid-50s, Garner finally speaks with a clarity that comes only from time and resilience. Her career continues to thrive. After decades in the industry, she has shown that she can adapt and remain relevant in a business that too often sidelines women as they age. Her lead role in the Apple TV Plus thriller The Last Thing He Told Me was proof of her enduring talent and star power, earning both critical praise and audience devotion. She balances projects carefully, choosing roles that allow her to remain a present mother while still exploring new challenges as an actress. Unlike many of her peers, she has never sought to reinvent herself with scandal or spectacle. Her longevity rests on consistency, authenticity, and craft. Garner's life today is far from defined by her marriage to Ben Affleck, but she doesn't erase that chapter either. In the rare interviews where she addresses it, she speaks with compassion mixed with boundaries. She has been clear about the difficult years of their separation, but she refuses to reduce their story to bitterness or blame. One of her most revealing comments came when she said, "I didn't marry the big movie star. I married him, and I would go back and remake that decision." It is not the statement of someone harboring resentment, it is the acknowledgement of a woman who loved deeply, who endured heartbreak, and who still respects the father of her children. Her reflections on Affleck now carry the weight of hindsight. She recognizes the struggles he faced, especially with addiction, but she does not allow those struggles to define her own narrative. She has drawn boundaries, ensuring that her focus remains on her children, her work, and her personal growth. For Garner, resilience has been the cornerstone of survival, an ability to take what could have been devastating and transform it into strength. Forgiveness, too, is part of her story. Not necessarily the kind that demands reconciliation, but the kind that frees a person from the chains of bitterness. By choosing not to dwell on the pain, Garner has set herself apart in an industry that often thrives on scandal and grudges. She has shown that grace is more powerful than gossip, and that dignity can withstand even the harshest spotlight. Fans see her today as the embodiment of that grace. To many, she is not just a movie star but a role model, a woman who has navigated fame, heartbreak, and single motherhood without losing her kindness or authenticity. She's relatable not because she has had a perfect life, but because she has faced imperfection with humility. Whether she's photographed dropping her kids off at school, promoting a new project, or speaking about her activism, she radiates a groundedness that feels rare in Hollywood. At 53, Jennifer Garner is no longer defined by her marriage, her divorce, or even her past struggles. She is defined by what she has built in their aftermath: a fulfilling career, a strong family, and a sense of self that remains unshaken. Her story is not one of scandal, but of survival and growth. And as she looks ahead, it's clear that the legacy she leaves will not just be about the roles she played on screen, but about the woman she chose to become off it: resilient, forgiving, and dignified. Ben Affleck's life after Jennifer Garner has played out like a movie sequel, louder, flashier, and impossible to ignore. His rekindled romance with Jennifer Lopez, 2 decades after their first engagement ended, quickly became one of the most talked-about stories in Hollywood. From red carpet appearances to glamorous weddings in Las Vegas and Georgia, Jennifer 2.0 has thrived under the spotlight. Their relationship has been dissected in magazines, splashed across social media, and celebrated by fans who relish the nostalgia of their early 2000s love story. Affleck, now married to Lopez, seems to have embraced this second chance at romance with the same intensity that defined their first whirlwind affair. But while Affleck's story with Lopez has been everywhere, Jennifer Garner has charted a very different path. Since the divorce, she has deliberately stepped away from the chaos of public scrutiny, carefully keeping her personal life private. Where Affleck and Lopez seem to court headlines with their high-profile romance, Garner has quietly built a new chapter defined by her work, her activism, and her role as a mother. Even her relationships, such as her on-and-off romance with businessman John C. Miller, have been conducted far from the paparazzi's gaze. Garner's silence hasn't been passive, it has been intentional, a conscious decision to live life on her own terms rather than let tabloids dictate the narrative. And in many ways, her silence has spoken louder than words. By refusing to trade in gossip or bitterness, Garner has earned a reputation as one of Hollywood's most dignified figures. Fans admire her ability to stay above the noise, to rise above speculation, and to put her children first. She hasn't needed a glamorous red carpet debut or a whirlwind romance to reclaim her identity. Instead, her strength has been revealed in the quiet choices, building her company, supporting causes she believes in, and ensuring her family's stability. Still, her recent openness matters. 4 years, the world has heard more from Affleck, his regrets about the divorce, his struggles with addiction, his gratitude for Garner's support. Meanwhile, Garner chose restraint, speaking rarely and cautiously. But now, at 53, she has begun to reflect publicly, offering glimpses into her truth. Her words, even when few, carry enormous weight because they come after years of silence. Fans don't just want Affleck's version of the story, they want Garner's perspective, shaped by compassion, resilience, and a refusal to dwell on bitterness. In the contrast between Affleck's high-profile marriage to Lopez and Garner's quiet strength, a legacy emerges. One life is lived loudly, with cameras documenting every embrace. The other is lived with deliberate grace, showing that sometimes the most powerful statement is choosing when and how to speak. And now that Garner is finally opening up, the world is listening more closely than ever. Jennifer Garner's story with Ben Affleck has often been framed as the rise and fall of a Hollywood fairytale, but to see it only through that lens is to miss the deeper truth. This has never been a tale of scandal or tabloid fodder, it has been a story of resilience, quiet strength, and a woman who refused to let heartbreak define her. Garner's journey is not one of a victim left in the wake of a failed marriage, but of someone who took the hardest chapters of her life and turned them into lessons about grace, motherhood, and the power of moving forward. When the world looked at her marriage, it saw glamour, 2 movie stars, 3 beautiful children, and a picture-perfect home life. But behind the scenes were struggles, Affleck's battles with addiction, the relentless scrutiny of fame, and the strain of balancing careers with family life. Those cracks eventually grew too wide, leading to the end of their marriage. Yet even in those painful years, Garner did not lash out or feed the flames of gossip. She stood firm, focused on protecting her children, and carried herself with dignity when it would have been far easier to let anger take over. Now, at 53, Garner represents something rare in Hollywood: authenticity. She continues to act in projects that excite her, like The Last Thing He Told Me. She devotes her energy to philanthropy, particularly children's welfare, and she has built a thriving business in Once Upon a Farm. Most importantly, she remains the anchor in her children's lives, ensuring that despite divorce, despite fame, and despite scrutiny, they are loved and supported. Her life is not about spectacle but about substance. Meanwhile, Affleck's journey has been louder, more turbulent, and often in the headlines. His rekindled marriage with Jennifer Lopez has captured global attention. He has been open about his regrets, his struggles, and his gratitude toward Garner for being there even in his darkest moments. But Garner's path, defined by quiet strength rather than constant revelation, has made just as much of an impact, if not more. Her silence through the years spoke volumes, showing that dignity is its own form of power. And yet, as she begins to open up, her voice resonates even more deeply. She acknowledges the pain without bitterness, the love without regret, and the lessons without shame. She shows us that love can shape us profoundly, but it doesn't have to define who we become. Her story is not about clinging to the past but about building a future rooted in strength and authenticity. Jennifer Garner may no longer be with Ben Affleck, but her truth stands as a reminder that resilience is greater than heartbreak. She is proof that dignity is louder than gossip, that silence can be powerful, and that when she chooses to speak, her words carry the weight of wisdom earned through experience. In the end, her journey is not just about surviving Hollywood's storms, it's about showing the world that even in love's aftermath, there is strength, there is grace, and there is a life still beautifully worth living. Jennifer Garner may no longer be with Ben Affleck, but her truth shows us that love can shape us without defining us. Her silence was powerful, but her voice today is even more inspiring.